How's everyone doing today? So, there's a question I get a lot as a Commander player, and that is, how do I build a mana base? I feel like there's a lot of videos out there from a bunch of other creators talking about their version of building a good mana base for Commander. But I think multiple perspectives is what we all need, because not everyone's going to have the same access to same cards, same types of funds, stuff like that. So I'm just going to go into kind of like a basic what do I do when building a mana base anywhere. And this I think works for any 2-color, 3-color, 2-color, 3-color, 4-color, and sometimes even 5-color decks. It's the same method I apply when I build all my decks, is the same philosophy, whether or not I'm playing 1 color to 5 colors. Is I first decide how many lands do I want to play. What is my deck's mana curve? So how many lands should I be playing in the deck to fulfill that mana curve to make sure I'm hitting lands each turn? And then I have to think, okay, what is my primary color, my secondary color, and then when you're getting into 3 to 4 to 5 color decks, you got to think, okay, so after my primary and secondary color, what's the third, the fourth, the fifth? Go down the line. So to start off, before I even put any amount of basic lands, any amount of dual lands, anything like in the deck, I go through and I count each individual mana symbol in the deck. So I'm going to put, some cards up here. I'm going to put some cards up here as like as an explanation of, we're going to, let's say we're building Jorah Weatherlight Captain. So you're building a red Anizet deck. Actually, no. So they're doing Niv Mizzet. So there we go. Niv Mizzet Perun, which is extremely heavy on the mana cost. You're looking at 3 blue, 3 red to cast. So you're playing an Izzet deck. Now you got to look at each mana cost in your spells. Say you're playing a lot of blue instead of a lot of red. You're putting a lot of blue, double blue pips. So you're counting each individual pips and making sure you're able to cast those spells on curve. If you have a 2-drop for 2 blue, you want to be able to play it on turn 2 or later down the game. So that's one thing I do, is I count each mana pip and I break it down into, okay, which color do I have the most of? So now we're playing Niv Mizzet. My deck is mostly blue. So before I even get into basic lands, I'm going to get all my dual lands I can get out. So like my steam vents, if I have steam vents, sulfur falls, stuff like that. Keep going down the line, putting X amount of dual lands. I don't think running all the dual lands is necessary for any 2-color deck. I don't think you have to run a bunch of dual color lands, because especially if your deck is heavy into 1 color, you should be able to run a good amount of basics as long as you have some good mana fixing and mana rocks. So I've counted all up my mana pips, and now I'm going to check my curve. So after I've counted all my mana pips, I'm going to lay my cards out, and I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So let's say we're running 5 1-drops, 6, this is really low, but say we're running maybe a total of like 15 1-drops, 25 2-drops, 33 drops, 15 4-drops, 5 or 6 5-drops, and then a couple of 6s and 7s here and there. So you right there have a mana curve that goes whoop like that, right? Which is a basic mana curve for most decks. So with that, you're in an Izzet deck, so you're probably running a good amount of artifact ramp, because you don't have a lot of land ramp. So you're running the signets, the talismans, the soul ring, stuff like that. Maybe a Thran Dynamo. And then, so you're probably going to run about 36, 37 lands if you're running a primary instant and sorcery heavy deck. So you want to make sure you're hitting your land drops each turn. You're running a lot of draw spells, so you're going to hit your land drops each turn, draw a decent amount of lands throughout the game. But yeah, that's kind of basically what I do. Is I just kind of look at my mana pips. I check my mana curve, and then I tailor my mana base around that. If I'm heavy in one color, I tend to run a certain percentage higher. Usually, if I have like 10 or more of one color compared to the other color in a 2-color deck, for example, if I have 10 more blue than I have red, then I'm going to only run, I'll run maybe 50% more blue mana, because I want to make sure I hit that threshold, make sure I'm casting those spells. And then, when you're getting to 3-color and 4-color decks, things get a little tricky. You tend to have to run a more expensive land base if you really want them to work out. But then you're going to look at what is your 3-color deck. You're going to look at what's your primary 2 colors, and not just your primary 1st color, but what is your primary 2 colors. So what are your 2 colors that you're seeing the most of? So say you're playing a Jeskai deck. Say you're playing Narset. Why not Narset? But you're primarily a blue-red deck that wants to take a bunch of turns and a bunch of extra combats, and you're kind of just splashing white in there. So you're not going to run a bunch of plains, a bunch of white sources. You're only going to run maybe a couple white sources here and there, just to kind of get your, make sure you're able to cast your commander and some, interaction spells. But typically, you're going to be running more like dual lands that produce red, dual lands that produce blue. That way, for a fact you're going to hit that threshold, and you're going to, have that color fixing that you need. It's kind of confusing the way I do it. I'm trying to break it down as best as I can. I hope this kind of isn't as confusing as I think it sounds, but that's just kind of how I do my lands. I think my mana is pretty good in most of my decks. I'm generally not color starved usually. Maybe 1 out of every 15 games I'll get that, I've got a land clump somewhere. But I tend to break down my decks pretty well and understand that making sure I have the colors when I need them is my top priority. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys want more tips like this, or should I just not tell you guys how I build decks, because it just could be wrong? Let me know down in the comment section below, guys, and as always, play more games!